It is a sad, rejoiceful, I guess, very bittersweet anniversary for the Pittsburgh Steelers today. And while everybody is sharing their memories of a man gone too soon, I figured I would do the same. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/all Steelers talk or anywhere you get your podcasts. And today I'm going to talk about Franco Harris and my story of Franco Harris. And the craziest part is I don't have one. I guess that's not that crazy. I'm 26 years old. I was, you know, 24 years born after the Immaculate Reception. I never got to witness the 70s for a long time in my life. I had no idea if it was Frank O. Harris or Franco Harris. But I grew up a Steelers fan. And in my house, my dad was very, very stern on making sure that I understood football history and assuring that if I was really going to love this game the way that I do, that it had to be done right. And I had to understand what legendary figures were in this game and how much they put into this game. You know, he's big on respect, was always big on respect. And I talk about that from time to time. I talked about it yesterday when I addressed Alex Highsmith's Pro Bowl snub. And, I talked about Champ Bailey and how my dad, the only Denver Broncos fan to ever walk through Pennsylvania, made sure that I knew who Champ Bailey was, but he didn't make sure that I knew who Champ Bailey was because he was a good cornerback. He made sure that I knew who Champ Bailey was because Champ Bailey was a legend. And he wanted to assure that I understood that legends get respect in the NFL. And there were a bunch of guys like that. I grew up and my favorite player was Hines Ward. And that was because nobody was respected in Pittsburgh like Hines Ward. Nobody. And my dad made sure about that. And he taught me the different ways of different people along the same route of, he'd always say things like if a team was lined up at the goal line and if you go for two, you win, you kick a field goal, you tie and go to overtime. He would always say, you want to know who go for two right now? Mike Tomlin. You want to know who go for two right now? Bill Cowher. He always made sure that I understood that there were greats in this league. There were greats in Pittsburgh if I was going to be a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, even if he wasn't a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and that I knew how to properly respect them. And I have carried that with me through my entire career. And my career is pretty short. I've only been here 4 years in this industry for, you know, I'd say a while, but I've only been in the Steelers locker room for 4 years. And I've made sure that in those 4 years, I have talked to as many legends as I could possibly talk to and meet as many icons as I could possibly meet and make sure that I shook the hands of men that people before me looked up to that I have heard of and have studied and have grown to admire. And Franco Harris was pretty high up on that list and always was. I was talking to Jim Wexell the other day and we were talking about Franco Harris and he was asking because I was like, dude, I got nothing to write anymore. Like the season is getting boring. The Steelers are, teetering on a playoff hope, but not really. Kenny Pickett looks good, but at this point, we see what we got in Kenny Pickett, and it's more about how big of a jump can you make next season. George Pickens is a monster. The defense has holes to fill, and Najee Harris is what we thought Najee Harris was going to be at the beginning of the season. It just took a while. And the questions about Matt Canada can't be answered right now. So we don't really have anything that we could dive into. And I was telling him this, and he said, well, you don't have a Franco story to write. And I said, I know I don't have a Franco story to write. Everybody else can sit down and, mindfully craft an experience or a timeline of Franco and all the great things that they grew up with. And I remember being in the stands at the Immaculate Reception and all this stuff. And I was just sitting here and I knew Franco. I've met Franco a handful of times, but I didn't grow up in the 70s. I had no idea what the Immaculate Reception was until I was, 10 years old. And even at that time, I was like, oh, very cool. But I didn't understand the impact of it. I just thought it was an amazing play in Steelers history. But did I realize that there was a statue in Pittsburgh? No, not until I got here. Did I realize who Franco Harris was as a person? No, not until I got here, which is where this is going to go, which is where my story of Franco Harris is and starts. It didn't start when I was 10 years old learning about the Immaculate Reception and the Steelers of the 70s and the Steel Curtain and all that. No, my Franco Harris story starts the first time I ever met the man, shook his hand. We were at UPMC Rooney Sports Complex, and I introduced myself as I do to any great that walks through that door. I assure myself that I make sure to shake their hand and say, "Hey, I'm Noah Strackbine. It's a pleasure to meet you, or an honor to meet you. I've looked up to you my whole life. I remember hearing about this from my dad. I always make sure that they understand that my dad did his part in teaching me the game of football. And Franco was one that you always remembered. And you always remembered Franco because you always felt like he cared, man. Always. The crazy thing about Franco Harris is that everything everybody says about him is true. That everything that he did with a full heart. And he did it always. I was there when he, teared up when they announced that his jersey was going to be retired. I was there at the opening of the Hall of Honor Museum when he talked for 10 minutes and my phone was shaking because I was trying to record the whole thing. And he spoke for so long that I'm pretty sure I gained a new tricep muscle. That's how long you had to hold your phone up. But the thing is that you listen back to that. And I do listen back to that. And I just listened back to that yesterday. That dude had so much passion, man. That dude had so much love for the game of football and for the city of Pittsburgh and for the Steelers, for this organization, for the people in it. That's the craziest part. It's not just I love being a Steeler. He was a true-blooded, I love Art Rooney. I love the players. I love the new guys. I love the old guys. I love my old teammates. I love the equipment men. I love the people at the front desk. I make sure that I thank the guys cooking the food in the cafeteria. That's who Franco Harris was. And you felt that. I was talking to Teresa Varley yesterday, and she was telling me how emotional she's been because her and Franco have known each other for a long time and they've been close. And that was the 10th story that I've heard in 24 hours of people acknowledging who Franco was and being that upset. And it's, you know, a little bummy that I don't have a real story. And I don't want to make this about me, and I am making it about me, which stinks. Don't want to do that. But I wish I did have a real story. I wish I had a time or a moment when me and Franco sat down and had a long conversation and discussed life. And, he told me this or he told me that, but I don't have any of those. I have the 4 or 5 times that I talked to him about football. I have the 4 or 5 times where he asked me how I was and how I was adjusting to the city and where I was from. And then, he laughed because he recognized instantly that Scranton is where the office is. And that's what I remember, you know, him getting a kick out of me saying Michael Scott is my uncle. But not many people do that, like you meet a lot of people in this industry, a lot of legends who shake your hand and say, "Oh, very cool. I'm glad that your dad taught you who I was." And then walk away and you're like, "You don't know who I am." And I don't think Franco knew who I was the second or the third or the fourth time that I met him either, because he meets 100 people and he's got no idea who this kid from Scranton is. And that's fine. I didn't expect him to. Like, that's my standard. My standard is these people are a trillion times above me right now. They got their own lives to worry about. I'm not going to take it personally when they don't remember who I am. But every time that I did meet him, he took it very, very personal to assure that I felt that he cared. And everybody else kind of felt the same way. And the fact that this man does not get to celebrate with us that the greatest play in Steelers history, the first playoff win in Steelers history, The jersey retirement that should have happened a while ago, something that he was so excited for. So excited for. The fact that that does not get to happen, it stinks. And it's super sad. And I'm not going to curse, but, there's a word that I would like to use that I think perfectly describes the situation. But I think Franco would have told us and would have told everybody, hey, man, it's okay. It's all right. That's okay. That's life. Life isn't always fair, but it's about working through it. And I think the Steelers are going to do more now to honor him than they ever could, because I think that that emotion is so raw that they are going to fight tooth and nail on Saturday and know that it's for Franco. Because these guys in the locker room have no idea what the Steelers of the 70s were. And most of them didn't grow up Steelers fans. So they don't even have the dad that sat down and assured that they knew what was going on like I did. These guys are just great football players who found their way to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Franco made sure that when he left, they wanted to take his memory so seriously because of the person that he was. That's beautiful. That's a perfect representation of who Franco Harris is. And it's, again, so sad that we have to do this in memory of Franco Harris. But nobody's lying when they tell you that Franco would be the first person to put his arm around you and assure that you're okay in this moment. Because Franco Harris, man, he was one of a kind. And I really wish that I had my own Franco Harris story. But I'm so thankful to be around people who get to share theirs with me.